This is not high tea. It's afternoon tea. But what's the difference? High tea and afternoon tea are sometimes used interchangeably here in the US, but on a recent trip to Victoria, BC, I noticed that all the tea services were called afternoon tea and not high tea, which I always thought meant a fancy tea service. So I looked into it, and traditionally they are two very different things with different histories. The leafy beverage tea came to England in the mid-1600s via Dutch traders, but it was so highly taxed that it was mostly consumed by the upper classes. Smugglers saw an opportunity and imported the leaves illegally, making it more widely available. But then the taxes on tea were cut from 119% to 12% in the late 1700s, shutting down the tea smugglers overnight and making it legally available to more of the population, and skyrocketing the consumption of the beverage. High tea is what we might now call supper or dinner. Working class people would come back from a hard day's work to a hearty meal and a big, strong pot of tea, usually sitting at a high table with high-backed dining chairs, hence the name high tea. Afternoon tea, on the other hand, was an informal midday meal taken in a parlor in lower seats, not a formal dining room. It is said to have been popularized by Anna Maria Russell, the 7th Duchess of Bedford, in the mid-1800s. While farmers and other rural workers were still reliant on daylight hours to do their work, fashionable society didn't need to hold to such schedules. Due to industrialization and the invention of gas lighting, the upper classes were eating dinner later and later. The story goes that Anna, who was feeling hungry midday between luncheon and the later dinner, had started ordering tea and bread and butter and cakes around 4 or 5 p.m., eventually inviting her friends to join her and ordering more elaborate snacks. In the next few decades, afternoon tea became a more elaborate affair, with opulent table settings and more specific foods. But it also became a ritual where some of the more strict gender roles of society lapsed. Afternoon tea was served in the house, in the domain of the woman, without the presence of her husband. She could entertain whoever she wanted, and even the fashion was less restrictive. Instead of corsets and stiff boning, there were more flowy fabrics. And of course, it was where women could gossip and share information. The Duchess was actually caught in a scandal with one of her friends after hearing Lady Flora Hastings complain about stomach pains at an afternoon tea. The Duchess and her friends started a rumor that Lady Hastings had been knocked up by somebody who was not her husband. When Lady Hastings was later diagnosed and then died of cancer, the Duchess and her friend were publicly criticized for starting the nasty rumor. The pros and cons of afternoon tea.